The Book of Revelation, its very name can conjure images of terrifying beasts, cosmic battles, and predictions of doom. For centuries, its vivid symbolism and prophetic prose have both captivated and perplexed readers. But what if the common association with fear and confusion misses its core message? Because its opening verse declares it to be the revelation of Jesus Christ. In Greek, Apocalypsis Jesu Christo, an unveiling of divine truths meant to be understood. Today, we journey into the heart of this unveiling, exploring one of its most pivotal sections, the seven seals, explained like never before. To truly understand the seven seals, we first need to grasp the foundations of Revelation itself. The author identifies himself simply as John, exiled on the island of Patmos for the Word of God and for the testimony of Jesus Christ. While traditionally identified as John the Apostle, the key is his role as a prophet receiving this divine vision. Most scholars date the book to around AD 95, during the reign of the Roman Emperor Domitian. This historical context is crucial. The late 1st century AD was a time of immense Roman power, and early Christians faced increasing pressure from the pervasive imperial cult, which demanded worship of the emperor as a divine figure. Refusal could lead to social ostracization, economic hardship, and even violent persecution. Revelation masterfully weaves together three literary genres. It's primarily apocalyptic literature, a style popular in Jewish and Christian circles from roughly 200 BC to AD 200, characterized by rich symbolic language, visions, stark dualism between good and evil, and heavy reliance on Old Testament allusions. It's also explicitly prophecy, meaning it not only foretells future events, but also speaks God's urgent message of repentance, faithfulness, and endurance to its original audience. And finally, it's an epistle, a circular letter addressed to 7 specific historical churches in Asia Minor, grounding its profound visions in their real-life struggles. So what was Revelation's core purpose? Foremost, it's to reveal Jesus Christ in his glorified sovereign majesty, his preeminence and kingship over all creation and history. He is both the source and the central subject of this unveiling. Beyond this Christocentric focus, Revelation aims to show God's servants things which must shortly take place, offering a prophetic perspective on his unfolding plan. It seeks to encourage the faithful to persevere through suffering and the allure of compromise with pagan culture, while warning the unfaithful against spiritual lethargy and doctrinal error. Ultimately, it reveals the final judgment of evil and depicts the ultimate reward and triumph of God, Christ, and the saints, culminating in a new heaven and a new earth. The 7 seals, described in Revelation chapter 6 through 8, represent a critical juncture in this apocalyptic unveiling. Their story begins in chapter 5, with a stunning vision of God on his heavenly throne, holding a scroll sealed with 7 seals, a scroll understood to contain his hidden purposes and judgments, his comprehensive plan for the consummation of history. A mighty angel asks, "Who is worthy to open the scroll and to loose its seals?" And no one in heaven or on earth is found worthy, causing John to weep. But then an elder reassures him, "Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has prevailed to open the scroll." John then sees not a conquering lion, but a lamb, as though it had been slain, who takes the scroll. This Lamb, Jesus Christ, alone is worthy by virtue of his redemptive sacrifice. The seals are not random disasters, they are a divinely orchestrated unfolding, initiated by the Lamb himself. In this episode, we will journey through the opening of each of these 7 seals. We'll delve into their biblical text, explore historical interpretations, uncover their rich Old Testament connections, analyze their symbolic meanings, and seek to understand their enduring theological significance. aiming to move beyond surface-level readings or fear-based sensationalism and equip you to approach this pivotal prophecy with new insight and understanding like never before. As the Lamb opens the first seal, John hears a voice like thunder from one of the four living creatures say, "Come!" And he looks, and behold, a white horse. He who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. This is the first of the iconic Four Horsemen. The imagery is stark. A white horse, a rider with a bow, given a crown, on a mission of conquest. But who is this rider? This has been intensely debated. Some see Christ or the victorious advance of the gospel. Others see the Antichrist, a deceptive figure bringing false peace, or a symbol of imperial military conquest, like the Roman Empire or the threatening Parthian archers, known for their white horses and skill with the bow, a familiar image to John's first-century audience. To understand this, like never before, let's look at two crucial Greek words. The crown given to this rider is a Stephanos, a victor's wreath, awarded in athletic games or to a conquering general. This is distinct from a diadema, which is a royal crown signifying inherent kingly authority. Christ, when he appears later in Revelation 19, wears many diadems. The beast and the dragon also wear diadems. So this Stephanos on the first horseman suggests a won victory, an achievement, perhaps temporary or contested, rather than absolute rightful kingship. This linguistic nuance is vital. If the rider is good, it's an initial triumph. If evil, it's a conqueror's achievement, not inherent divine right. Furthermore, the phrase, "a crown was given to him," uses a divine passive in Greek, implying this authority, whatever its nature, is permitted or granted by a higher power, ultimately God. This reinforces God's sovereignty over all events. And the mission, conquering and to conquer, emphasizes a determined, ongoing process. This isn't a static figure, but a dynamic force striving for dominion. The Old Testament parallel with Zechariah's colored horses patrolling the earth is clear, but Revelation transforms them into active agents of judgment. The sheer ambiguity of this first rider, good or evil, creates immediate interpretive tension, compelling us to look closely at what follows. When the Lamb opens the second seal, another living creature cries, "Come!" and another horse, fiery red, goes out. And it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. And there was given to him a great sword. The shift is immediate and ominous. If the first seal hinted at conquest, perhaps even a deceptive peace, the second shatters that illusion with overt violence. The color, fiery red, in Greek, pyros, is almost universally symbolic of blood, war, and slaughter. The rider is explicitly granted permission to remove peace, leading to widespread mutual slaughter. And crucially, he is given a great sword, in Greek, machaira megali. The word machaira can refer to a shorter sword or dagger, but the adjective megal, great or large, elevates its significance. This isn't about minor skirmishes. It signifies substantial military power, the authority to wage large-scale war, and the capacity for immense destruction. This linguistic detail amplifies the horror. This progression from the white horse to the red often reflects a tragic pattern in human history. Ambition for conquest, represented by the first seal, directly leading to widespread warfare, the grim reality of the second. Empires built on conquest often face internal rebellion or external challenges, resulting in further bloodshed. The sword, in Old Testament imagery, is frequently an instrument of divine judgment and wrath, God sometimes using human agents, even unrighteous nations, to execute his purposes. The unleashing of this red horse is an act of divine judgment, allowing the destructive tendencies of humanity to manifest when true peace, found in God, is rejected. As the Lamb opens the third seal, the third living creature issues the call, "Come." John says, "So I looked, and behold a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, 'A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine.'" This seal shifts the judgment from overt violence to economic hardship. The imagery is stark: a black horse, widely associated with famine, mourning, and want. Its rider holds a pair of scales, a zygon in Greek. These scales are primarily a symbol of scarcity, where food must be meticulously weighed out. However, scales also represent commerce and justice, or in this case, injustice. The Old Testament repeatedly calls for just balances. Their presence here, in a scene of extreme economic disparity, implies a judgment on unjust systems. The proclamation from the midst of the living creatures details hyperinflationary prices for staple grains. A denarius was a Roman silver coin, generally a standard day's wage for a common laborer. A quart, or choinix of wheat, was roughly daily sustenance for one person. So, a full day's work buys just enough food for one, leaving nothing for a family. Barley, a cheaper grain, is slightly more available but still exorbitantly priced. But the truly like never before insight often missed here is the command, "And do not harm the oil and the wine." Oil and wine, while common, were also staples of comfort or relative luxury compared to basic grains. Their preservation amidst the scarcity of essentials points not to total starvation for everyone, but to a severe economic imbalance. The rich can still afford their comforts, while the poor struggle for basic survival. This detail powerfully critiques social injustice and wealth disparity, a judgment that disproportionately affects the vulnerable. This isn't just famine. It's famine exacerbated by an unjust economic order. The Old Testament is rich with descriptions of famine conditions, like rationing bread by weight as a covenant curse, which this seal directly echoes. The opening of the fourth seal unleashes the most explicitly named and perhaps most terrifying of the horsemen. John writes, "When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, 'Come.' So I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with him. And power was given to them over a fourth of the earth, to kill with sword, with hunger, with death, and by the wild beasts of the earth." This seal represents a grim culmination and intensification. The sword echoes the red horse of war. Hunger, famine, echoes the black horse of scarcity. Death in this list is often understood as pestilence or plague, and the introduction of wild beasts adds another terrifying agent of mortality. It's an escalating cascade of destruction. The rider is explicitly named Death, Thanatos in Greek, personifying mortality itself. And he's not alone. Hades, the Greek equivalent of the Old Testament Sheol, the realm of the dead, the grave, follows closely, swallowing up those slain by death. They are inseparable companions. Power is given to them over a fourth of the earth, a vast but still limited scope, signifying that God's judgment, while severe, is not yet total. But the like never before detail crucial for understanding this seal's horror is the color of the horse, pale. The Greek word is chloros. This isn't just a washed-out white. Chloros denotes a sickly, pale green or greenish-yellow hue, the color of decaying flesh, of severe illness like chlorosis, an iron deficiency anemia giving a greenish tinge to the skin, of fear or of blighted dying vegetation. This choice of color is far more visceral and horrific than a simple pale or ashen horse. It vividly evokes death, disease, and decay, a perversion of the natural, healthy green of life. This comprehensive assault on human life directly parallels God's four severe judgments threatened against Jerusalem in Ezekiel 14: sword, famine, wild beasts, and plague or pestilence. This strong Old Testament allusion indicates these are not random calamities, but have a precedent in God's covenantal judgments for disobedience. The fourth seal, then, with its chloros horse and its quartet of judgments, paints a terrifying picture of widespread mortality and societal breakdown, all occurring under the sovereign permission of God. With the opening of the fifth seal, the apocalyptic drama shifts dramatically. The focus moves from the calamities unfolding on earth to a poignant scene in heaven. John writes, "When he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, 'How long, O sovereign Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth?' Then a white robe was given to each of them, and it was said to them that they should rest a little while longer, until both the number of their fellow servants and their brethren who would be killed as they were was completed." This seal offers a crucial theological insight into God's perspective on suffering and justice. The key elements are the souls of martyrs, literally those having been slaughtered, located under the heavenly altar. Their position under the altar is rich with Old Testament sacrificial imagery. In the tabernacle and temple system, the blood of sacrifices, representing life, was poured out at the base of the altar. This powerfully portrays the martyrs' deaths as sacrifices offered to God, their lives poured out in faithful witness, elevating their suffering to an act of profound devotion recognized in heaven. Their cry, "How long, O Lord, until you judge and avenge our blood?" is not a call for personal bitter revenge, but a plea for divine justice, for God to act according to his righteous character and vindicate his name and the truth for which they died. This poignant cry echoes similar laments throughout the Old Testament, voiced by prophets and psalmists during times of suffering and perceived divine delay. It connects the martyr's experience to a long tradition of God's people wrestling with suffering and yearning for his intervention. God's response is threefold. They are each given a white robe, symbolizing purity, imputed righteousness, victory, and divine honor. They are told to rest, indicating a temporary period of peace in God's presence. And they are informed about divine timing, that the full number of their fellow martyrs must be completed. This reveals that the martyrs are conscious, aware, and capable of communication with God, challenging views of soul sleep. And crucially, their cry for justice is not rebuked, it's presented as a righteous appeal. The fifth seal directly addresses the problem of evil and innocent suffering, what we call theodicy, offering comfort and perspective, even if not immediate earthly retribution. It assures that the suffering of God's faithful is not forgotten, but is seen, honored, and will ultimately be addressed within his sovereign plan. The opening of the sixth seal unleashes a series of terrifying cosmic disturbances, a dramatic escalation in the manifestation of divine judgment. John vividly describes a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth, as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. This cosmic chaos evokes universal terror. All segments of humanity, kings, great men, rich men, commanders, mighty men, every slave and every free man, hide in caves and among mountain rocks, crying out, "Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand?" Now, to understand this, like never before, It's critical to recognize that this type of cosmic decreation language is standard Old Testament prophetic imagery. It's the language of theophany, God's awe-inspiring intervention, used to describe catastrophic historical judgments upon nations like the fall of Babylon in Isaiah 13 or Egypt in Ezekiel 32. The sun darkening, the moon turning to blood, stars falling. These are recurrent Day of the Lord motifs found in prophets like Joel and Amos. The focus here is less on a scientific literal description of planetary destruction at this specific seal, and more on the terrifying impact of God's judgment on human society and the visible manifestation of his sovereign power causing the collapse of all human securities and institutions. The very fabric of the created order appears to unravel. The judgment is explicitly attributed to him who sits on the throne and the Lamb. The wrath of the Lamb is a stunning paradox. The one who was slain in sacrifice is now the agent of terrifying judgment against those who have rejected his mercy and perpetuated evil. The universal terror affecting all social classes underscores the absolute leveling effect of God's wrath. No earthly status, wealth, or power provides refuge, and the terrified rhetorical question, who is able to stand, is not left unanswered. It serves as a crucial literary and theological bridge to the interlude of Revelation chapter 7, which will precisely answer who can stand in the face of such overwhelming divine judgment. Following the terrifying cosmic upheaval of the sixth seal, which culminates in that desperate question, for the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand? The narrative of Revelation pauses. Chapter 7 serves as a crucial interlude, a masterful stroke of narrative pacing and theological comfort. Just as the audience might feel overwhelmed by the prospect of inescapable judgment, this chapter shifts focus from divine wrath upon the ungodly to divine protection and assurance for God's people. It directly answers the question, who is able to stand? This interlude is not a digression, but an integral part of the unfolding drama. It reveals God's meticulous care and preservation of his elect amidst the judgments being unleashed upon the world. It offers profound hope and assurance, especially for the original audience likely facing persecution, affirming their ultimate security and triumph in Christ. And it depicts the full scope of God's redeemed people, encompassing both Israel and the Gentiles. The interlude presents two distinct but complementary visions. First, John sees four angels holding back the four winds of the earth, winds that symbolize destructive judgment, until the servants of God are sealed on their foreheads. An angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, commands this delay. John then hears the number of those sealed, 144,000 from all the tribes of the children of Israel, 12,000 from each of 12 named tribes. Now, how do we understand this 144,000 like never before? While some interpret this literally as 144,000 ethnic Jews playing a special role in the end times, a more prevalent scholarly view sees this number as highly symbolic. Numbers in Revelation are consistently symbolic. Here, 144,000 likely represents the completeness of God's people, the new or true Israel of God, which includes both Jewish and Gentile believers. It's derived from 12, the number of Israel's tribes, and the apostles symbolizing God's people, squared, 12 times 12 equals 144 for emphasis and completeness, and then multiplied by 1,000, representing a large organized multitude or even a spiritual army. The unique tribal list in Revelation 7, which differs from standard Old Testament listings, Judah, the Messiah's tribe, is listed first, and the tribe of Dan, often associated with idolatry, is notably omitted, while Levi, the priestly tribe, and Manasseh are included. suggests a reconstituted, purified and messianic Israel. Now, this often identifies the church militant on earth, sealed for spiritual warfare and endurance. This act of sealing on the forehead has Old Testament roots, notably in Ezekiel 9, where a mark protects those who grieve over abominations from impending judgment. In Revelation, the seal signifies divine ownership and divine protection. Then, John's perspective shifts. After hearing the number 144,000, he sees something related but visually distinct. A great multitude which no one could number, of all nations, tribes, peoples, and tongues standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes, with palm branches in their hands. This innumerable host is engaged in joyful worship, crying out, "Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb." An elder explains their identity. These are the ones who come out of the great tribulation. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Many interpreters see this great multitude as representing the entirety of God's redeemed people from all nations and throughout all history, now triumphant in heaven, the church triumphant. The hearing of the 144,000, Israel, God's people on earth, perfectly numbered and prepared for battle, and the seeing of the innumerable multitude, all nations in heaven victorious, is a common pattern in Revelation, suggesting two complementary perspectives on the same redeemed community. The white robes signify purity and righteousness achieved through Christ's redemptive work. The palm branches are symbols of victory, joy, and celebration, particularly evoking the Old Testament Feast of Tabernacles, which celebrated God's provision and looked forward to the final ingathering of all nations. Their vision concludes with eternal bliss, serving God in his temple, sheltered by his presence, free from hunger, thirst, and sorrow, with the Lamb as their shepherd. This powerful vision answers who can stand. It is this vast, redeemed, and ultimately triumphant multitude, preserved and glorified by God. After the reassuring interlude of Revelation 7, the solemn progression of the seals resumes with the Lamb opening the seventh and final seal. However, this event doesn't immediately unleash a new calamity in the same manner as the first six. Instead, John describes something extraordinary. When he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. This profound and dramatic pause is one of the most striking moments in Revelation. What could this silence mean, explained like never before? It's far from an empty pause. This silence is pregnant with meaning, a powerful contrast to the continuous sounds of worship and angelic proclamations that usually characterize heavenly scenes in Revelation. It signifies deep reverence, holy awe, and solemn reflection in the presence of the sovereign God as he prepares to enact further, more direct judgments. Think of an earthly courtroom falling silent as the judge presides. So too the heavenly court hushes in somber expectation. This half an hour, likely symbolic of a relatively short but deeply significant period, creates a sacred space, a palpable pause, indicating the unutterable gravity of God's unfolding plan and the imminence of what is to follow. The concept of silence before God, especially in the context of judgment or divine appearance, has deep Old Testament roots in passages from Habakkuk, Zephaniah, and Zechariah, grounding this heavenly silence in a rich prophetic tradition. This silence then transitions into a significant heavenly liturgy. John sees the seven angels who stand before God being given seven trumpets. Then, another angel with a golden censer stands at the heavenly altar, the golden altar of incense, which, in the earthly tabernacle, stood before the veil to the Holy of Holies. This angel is given much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. The ascending smoke of the incense mingled with these prayers, especially the cries of the martyrs from the fifth seal, and the general intercessions of the faithful powerfully symbolizes their efficacy and acceptance before God. The liturgical action culminates dramatically. The angel fills the censer with fire from the altar and hurls it to the earth. The result? Noises, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake, signs of divine power and the initiation of judgment, reminiscent of the theophany at Mount Sinai and the cosmic disturbances of the sixth seal. This fire, taken from the altar where prayers were offered, directly links the saints' intercessions to the judgments that follow. The seventh seal, therefore, with its solemn silence and liturgical preparation, isn't an end in itself, but a critical hinge. It closes the first series of judgments and solemnly inaugurates the next, more intense phase of God's end-time actions. The seven trumpet judgments, God's response in part to the prayers of his people for justice and the consummation of his kingdom. So, to truly understand the seven seals, like never before, we must move beyond viewing them as just a disconnected checklist of disasters. There are overarching themes and structural patterns that reveal profound theological coherence. First, recognize the interconnectedness of woes. The first four horsemen often depict a logical, historically observable progression. Conquest can lead to war, which breeds famine and economic collapse, culminating in widespread death. This reveals a pattern of societal breakdown when peace is removed and justice perverted. The seals together form a distinct theological narrative arc, moving from earthly turmoil initiated under divine permission to the heavenly perspective of the martyrs through divine assurance for God's people, and finally to a new, more direct phase of divine action. Crucially, the Lamb is the central actor. Christ himself initiates the opening of each seal. This reframes the entire sequence. These are not random, chaotic events happening to God's plan. They are events initiated by Christ as part of God's sovereign unfolding of history and judgment. This reinforces Revelation's primary purpose, to reveal Christ's preeminence and his control over all things. Many of the judgments described, war, famine, pestilence, echo Old Testament covenantal curses for disobedience. This roots the seals in God's established patterns of dealing with sin, applicable both to covenant-breaking Israel and ungodly nations, providing a deeper biblical theological framework that transcends simple prediction. Finally, the literary structure itself is revealing. The 4+2+ interlude +1 pattern of the seals, four horsemen, then two more intense cosmic seals, the interlude of hope in chapter 7, and the final transitional seventh seal, is deliberate. It mirrors God's pattern of judgment, tempered with grace and assurance for his people. Furthermore, many scholars see recapitulation or cyclical parallelism in Revelation, where the three great series of judgments, seals, trumpets, and bowls, are not strictly linear and chronological. Instead, they may cover much of the same end-time period, but from different perspectives, or with escalating intensity, each culminating towards the final judgment. Understanding this helps avoid rigid, failed timelines and allows the seals to speak powerfully about the nature of the entire age between Christ's comings or the characteristics of the final crisis, viewed from multiple angles. The seventh seal itself, leading to the seven trumpets, demonstrates a nested or telescoping structure, showing that end-time events possess a complex, unfolding, and intensifying nature. As our exploration of Revelation's seven seals draws to a close, it's vital to synthesize what we've journeyed through and consider how to responsibly engage with such profound, often challenging, apocalyptic literature. Remember, the primary message of Revelation was for the seven churches in Asia Minor, offering them hope and calling them to faithfulness amidst persecution and the pressure to compromise. To understand it, we must recognize its genre. It's highly symbolic and visionary, not a literal, chronological newspaper prediction of the future. The Old Testament is the primary dictionary for Revelation symbols, and understanding those allusions is key. Our focus should always be on its central theological messages: the sovereignty of God, the ultimate victory of Jesus Christ, the call to faithful endurance even unto death, the certainty of judgment for evil, and the unwavering hope of eternal life and a new creation. Sensationalism and dogmatic date-setting miss the point. The word apocalypse means unveiling, not obscuring. The purpose of this book and our exploration is to unveil meaning and make the core message clearer. So what is the ultimate message of the Seven Seals? Despite the often frightening and violent imagery, it's one of profound hope and divine sovereignty. God, through Christ the Lamb, is in control of history and its culmination. Nothing happens outside his permissive will. Judgment against evil, injustice and rebellion is certain. The wrath of the Lamb is not capricious anger, but the settled righteous judgment of the very one who offered himself for redemption, underscoring the seriousness of rejecting his grace. And perseverance in faith is required and ultimately rewarded. The vision of the martyrs and the great multitude assures that such faithfulness is seen, honored, and leads to eternal glory. The overarching narrative of Revelation, including the Seven Seals, moves inexorably towards the ultimate victory of Christ, the establishment of his eternal kingdom, and the creation of a new heaven and a new earth, where, as Revelation 21:4 promises, God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. The Seven Seals, as terrifying as some of their imagery may be, are a necessary part of this divine journey towards ultimate redemption and restoration. We encourage you to revisit the book of Revelation, especially chapters 5 through 8, applying some of the interpretive principles and insights we've shared. Discuss your thoughts and interpretations respectfully with others, remembering that sincere believers may hold different detailed views while affirming the core theological messages. Reflect on the call to endurance and faithful witness in your own life, drawing strength from the assurance of Christ's ultimate victory. And always focus on the ultimate hope that permeates Revelation, the triumphant return of Jesus Christ, and the glorious hope of God's perfected kingdom. Thank you for joining us on Bible Galaxy for this deep dive into the Seven Seals of Revelation, unveiled like never before. What aspects of Revelation would you like us to explore next? Let us know in the comments, share this video if it offered you new insights, and be sure to subscribe for more explorations into the depths of God's Word.